Okay, so we have Koi here, and besides being involved in some amazing aviation stuff, he also has really good taste in vehicles. And I'm a Toyota nut, and he's a Toyota nut. But this one particularly is special because you essentially drove this all around Africa.
Yeah, I went across the U.S. to New York, put it on a boat to England, drove all around Western, Eastern Europe for 3 months, and then down to Spain and into Africa, from Morocco down to Cape Town and back up to Egypt. Shipped it to Italy, drove all through Scandinavia, across Russia, and into Kazakhstan.
And, you know, out of all the vehicle choices that you could have had to do this trip, why did you choose this?
I wanted an older Toyota and a diesel, because no computers, really nothing to go wrong, and a bulletproof engine. The 12HT has never given me any problems. It's been phenomenal, and there's a lot of parts availability around Africa for it. I originally wanted a 70 series, but those things are so expensive. Then I got a 60 series and actually fell in love with it. I like having a smaller vehicle.
Okay.
There's a lot of places I went with this. You could not have gone with a 70 series. It does have a 70 series limited slip rear end under it.
Okay.
So that's nice.
And what year is this?
89.
89. And as far as, you know, fuel capacity, and this being a diesel, and like what type of, I mean, when you were doing this trip with this vehicle, did you have gas stations that you knew about? Was it somewhat unknown?
Kind of figured out. There was never really a fuel shortage except for in Sudan.
Okay.
I changed the tank out, so it's a 45-gallon tank. And then I carried 20 gallons in jerry's. And the only time I ever needed all of that was in Sudan.
Okay.
So from there on, I mean, most of the time, the tank was fine in 2 jerry's, and that would have been plenty.
Would you mind popping the hood?
Sure.
So, a little bit about this motor, since us Americans don't really get to see these diesels too often.
Yeah, inline 6 turbo. Everything is pretty factory. The only thing I've had to do to it is change the injectors. It's absolutely bulletproof.
How many miles do you have on this now?
Around 450,000.
When you did this trip, you know, we were talking about this, your adventures with this. What was the biggest failure point on this? You said it never broke down on you.
It
always
never left me stranded.
Okay.
I broke it a lot. Biggest failures. The frame broke in half on both sides at one point on some absolutely horrible washboard roads in the Serengeti. The only thing holding it together was the leaf springs. And it sort of limped, just like bouncing like this, until I was able to find a welder, and we put a plate on the side, welded it back up. The gearbox exploded in Spain. It was a long course from San Sebastian to Barcelona, off-road the entire way, through some horrible roads in the mountains, and it was just really aggressive on the gearbox. And it had a lot of miles on it by that point anyway. That was the original gearbox. But even when that blew up, it still left me with 3rd gear. So I was still able to limp it to a mechanic and get a new gearbox put in it.
That's amazing. And this is obviously, some people that appreciate this is right-hand drive. And obviously, because it's parts, I mean, you were saying that down in Africa, parts availability for these was
great.
Was great.
Yeah, there was nothing I couldn't get down there.
So if somebody on the American side was wanting to get one of these, how difficult is it to get parts for this here?
Here, it's a lot harder.
It is.
It is way harder to get parts for this here than it was overseas. Most of the stuff I get for this, like I just rebuilt the injector pump and the plungers for that. Yeah. I searched the entire planet and I finally found a set in Norway. But if you want to do it in the States, they're going to basically tell you that you have to have it made.
The 5-speed manual?
Yep.
And were you just, I mean, do you have like living quarters? What was your setup in the back?
Yeah, so I got the tent on the roof. So that's where I stayed most of the time, except up in Scandinavia in the winter. It got so cold that all the zippers on the tent froze and I couldn't get them open. So I just slept on the front seat. Aside from that, in the back, I have a little kitchen set up, which I can open for you. When I originally did this trip, I had zero overlanding experience. I just read a book. It was written in the 70s about it.
Okay.
And just sort of went based off of that and took my best guess, and it worked out. I mean, there's things I'll change, and before I go back on the road again, I'll sort of rebuild this interior. I think internal living space is important, and I didn't do that here.
Yeah.
I'll get rid of the rooftop tent and do a pop-top roof.
Okay.
I won't have 2 spare tires. I only ever needed 1.
Even through all that?
I'd blow them all the time, but I never blew more than 1 at a time before I got a tire patch made. So I really think 2 is unnecessary. So this one has the barn doors, which is actually pretty rare. Most of them don't have this. It's, you know, the tailgate. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So emergency food supplies, you know, then the regular food and all sorts of other random junk up top. This side is the fridge. It's an ARB. That thing's been great, bulletproof.
This runs off 12 volt.
Yeah, there's just a cigarette lighter plug back here. Then this is just all the cooking supplies. And then actually behind this panel is a smuggling compartment, which goes down the recorder panel.
Yeah.
So that's where you put everything that you might not be allowed to carry into a country, whether it's like cooking knives or other things like that.
I never knew that. Now you're speaking of that, you wanted to do another long trip, and some of the crazy stuff that you talked about earlier was like when it got stuck in a certain area, and it took you several months to get it back out, didn't it?
Years.
Years.
So I got stuck in Kazakhstan. That's where I was when COVID started, and it was 2 years before I was allowed back in the country. And by that time, Russia started sending me letters, because Russia controls Kazakhstan's custom union.
Yeah.
And they said, hey, your car's overstayed its permit. You know, you owe us a bunch of money. But of course, the fine amount was negotiable, which lets you know it's kind of a
Yeah.
So I said, okay, how much? And we worked out a deal, and I went to go pay them, and then they invaded Ukraine and got cut off from international banking, so I had no way to pay them. I told them that, and they said, well, fly here with a briefcase full of money. Oh, by the way, there's now a warrant out for your arrest because you failed to pay this fine in a certain amount of time. So the short version of that story is it took about a year to get everything worked out. I flew to Kazakhstan, met with a member of the mob there that sort of brings vehicles in illegally, because there's like 100% tax on vehicles in Kazakhstan, so a lot of them come in illegally, and worked with him to send it out on a boat across the Caspian Sea into Azerbaijan. And then I was with the vehicle, met it in Azerbaijan, and then drove it out from there, avoiding all the issues that were going on in Armenia at that time.
How long did this take you from beginning to end?
The entire trip, or just the recovery of the car?
Just the recovery.
The recovery of the car was 44 days.
And the entire trip?
The entire trip was about 3 years.
And what's your next big journey with this?
I'd like to go up to Alaska and across to Russia, down to Mongolia, and then back to Kazakhstan where I was, and then continue from there across Asia. But with the current state of the world, that might have to wait. So next is probably going to be South America.
And would you do it with the current drivetrain setup and the motor?
Drivetrain motor, yeah, 0 issues. What I want to do before then is do a little bit of rust repair.
Yeah.
It got all the sweating in the container for 3 years in Kazakhstan, caused a lot of rust issues to begin, so I want to get ahead of those before they get any worse.
Yeah.
And then I'll probably gut this interior and redesign this.
Okay. That's amazing. Well, Koi is involved in aviation in some incredible ways that you'll see in future videos, but Toyota guy, he's a Toyota guy, and I'm like, we had to document this amazing machine, and look forward to the rest of your journeys with this. So thank you for showing us this.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.